Anywho, welcome guys to Three Losers in a Church. Today, this is episode 16, and it is titled "Lift Yourself." For those of you Kanye fiends, that is a reference to Kanye West. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about, talking. I think Chris wanted to focus in a little bit about inspired by Kanye's new album, which came out a month ago, called "Jesus is King." We just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of like celebrities or just like people who kind of like take the mantle of saying they are Christian and like kind of like interactions that they have with the greater people or how people perceive them. So, yeah, Chris, do you mind diving in a little bit more about this topic for us to talk about?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, the album music criticism aside, because that's a different subject. But yeah, I was kind of, I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for? I wrote inspired again. I keep using the word inspired. I was thinking about this because of Jesus is King. And then I actually watched Anthony Fantano's review of the album, who is not a Christian. And he was talking about whether or not like Kanye and the album are like representing a Christian lifestyle. I thought that was interesting coming from somebody who usually has bad things to say about Christianity. And then I was thinking about like, at what point does he become like a public figure that we hold accountable? Or like, does that happen? Is that supposed to happen? Because like, I don't know, you'd expect like a pastor or a church deacon or something to be living a Christian lifestyle, at least to a certain extent. And like, should we be expecting, like this guy has like a lot of public pull.
Yeah.
Like, or clout, I guess is the word. But
Tyler just rolled his eyes.
Hardcore.
Like, I don't know, should we expect him to like be held to that standard at all? Because then there's the artistic side of things. And then also it's like we always talk about, we can never know the intent or heart behind what he's doing.
Of course, you as a music major would bring this up, huh?
Yeah. Because like, for me, music's a weird thing anyway, because like to me, it's like a safe place where you can get messy with like emotion and like things like that. Not that you should be like blatantly sinning in your music, but I don't know.
I feel like my question to you, Chris. I feel like this is a radio show. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the topic.
Yeah.
Which I could be, but are we focusing on Kanye's like external relations to the world? I don't want to say saying that he's a Christian because that makes it seem like I'm doubting him. And if he says he is, then he is. I don't care. But like, are we focusing on his external relations as a Christian? Or are we focusing on like in general people in public figure positions? Should they be held to a higher standard? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think
A little
yes.
bit of neither?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So I think it's really easy to be like, okay, so Kanye is a Christian now, question mark. I think he's always been fairly religious, right? I don't know.
Yeah, because he did like Jesus Walks, right?
He did.
I think.
And like, I think he's brought it up in the past in interviews and stuff. I don't know a lot about Kanye, if we're being honest.
Same.
But like, I don't think now that he's released this album that he now has to be the Pope.
Right.
Right. I don't think that's fair to him, right? Because he's not the Pope. But that'd be weird. Sorry.
Pope Kanye the third.
Kanye was the Pope.
Remember when he said he was going to run for presidency?
Yeah. He couldn't legally. He wasn't old enough. But
2020.
yeah, so like, I don't think that's a fair criteria to put on him. Also, I don't think I don't like. That seems very objective. It's bad. It still seems objective, but the amount of backlash and flack he has received for like his lifestyle and like him being a Christian, how that's like false and all those other things. And of course, like I don't think he's doing it for the clout, right?
Yeah.
As you said earlier.
I've never used the word clout until now, by the way.
I was going to
It's the
say,
first time
I
I've
was just
ever
like,
said
oh
it.
gosh. Kind of to also rewind, because I think one thing that made me, I think the way you're approaching it, Tyler, is actually a good way, because I think also, let's strip it away and like pretend like for instance, like looking at you, right? It's like if you were in a public place, let's say work, right?
I think
And then
this
it's
is a
just
good way
like
to go.
you say, "Hi, I'm a Christian." You tell your coworkers that. Automatically, they're already going to look at you slightly differently. They're like, "Oh, if you're Christian, then I expect you to act in a certain way or manner." That's just the culture we live in. When I'm at school, like a lot of kids already know I'm Christian, and similarly, it's just like, all right, if they know that, like, then how can I like continue being like a mantle or just like showing like God's love through my actions, right? Of course, everything I'm going to be doing now is going to be scrutinized. I think in any platform, whether it be music, whether it be sports, I'm thinking Jeremy Lin, I'm thinking Tim Tebow, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone who said they're a Christian, they get scrutinized. We go back to hip hop. Chance the Rapper. There's like, what was it? The whole the Coloring Book. People were like, oh yeah, like he says it's a very gospel heavy inspired album, but then he's swearing and also doing all this stuff. I remember I had a friend who was like, oh, like Chance the Rapper, he says he's Christian, but how come he's featuring on a song that's talking about like women who like about women and twerking and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, criticizing him for that. So regardless, you will be criticized for saying that you are a Christian. Now, going back to Kanye, I think the way he's handling it right now, like the presentation, at least from the interviews and like the James Corden that you've seen that one too, where like he has like the whole like choir on the airplane, like he seems like a changed man. He speaks of Jesus, like how God has like changed his life, and like I think you said, if that's what he says, so be it, right?
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to the individual, but I think it's also as Christians who are watching this, like we too should have the grace if like down the road, I don't know, like he had a lot of episodes in the past couple years, right? And like he said some really crazy things about like slavery and all that, but like he's just a man at the end of the day, simply because he is famous and known by all. Just because he says he's a Christian, I mean, will we not show grace if like you messed up or if I messed up?
Yeah.
Then I think the same should be done with Kanye as well. Like, sure, he's on a bigger stage, literally, but like he too is just a man.
And that's the thing too, is like you said, everything's being scrutinized and it's all magnified too.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, unless Alexa's listening to what I'm saying right now, there's not like a large record of like my past. Whereas like not only is he a public figure, but he's like recorded albums that can always be referenced, that like you can look back and be like, oh, he tweeted this, or like
Gold Digger.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote Gold Digger. But
Black Skinhead.
I was gonna say I don't think Gold Digger's his worst song, but
There's a lot.
we could debate that.
I don't know much about his discography, but
what was it? Life of Pablo? That entire album is
Runaway.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and like that's you can reference like any of them.
Yeah.
What about that song?
What song?
Which one?
Runaway.
Runaway. And that's the thing. Like I like Runaway. Like, what does that say about me?
Yeah.
You know, that's a vulgar song, but I don't know. Yeah, and like, yeah, and then that are we just judging him for his past?
Yeah.
And then, are also we just going to be judging him for what he does now immediately? I don't know.
I think it's that mentality though. It's like you have to understand like he's human at the end of the day. Like the other person I think of that instantly when like the whole Kanye thing happened, Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
If I recall,
Yeah.
he was the one who had the interview. He was like, "Oh, like you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. Like if you go to Taco Bell, that doesn't make you a taco." That is a direct quote from him. But again, like if you zoom out and say like, oh, like this is where he was. I think similar to Kanye, he was in a very dark space, and then like the church reached out to him and really like brought him back on his feet. So if it's beneficial for the individual, like so be it. Like God's using that as a platform, right? And I think that was also something that interesting that Kanye said. He said, you know, like I have this opportunity, I have this chance, and then I'm letting God take that chance on me to like kind of glorify His name. If that's his goal, if that's his motivation, that's beautiful, right? Like, I can't help but think of that verse in the Bible where like the disciples come to Jesus. They're like, "Hey, Jesus, like there are these people who like are preaching out your name, but they're like not like of us and everything." But then God's like, you know, like Jesus, like, but at the end of the day, they're still preaching my name, right? Similar to Kanye, we can question his motives. We can question like all those things that he's doing. Like for all we know, maybe he'll do something ridiculous and say something really racist or just downright wrong tomorrow. But still, New York City. Plastered everywhere.
Yeah.
Jesus is king. I think that's sick. Like, well, you don't see that every day.
Right.
And to see like people in the Christian world also talking about hip hop in that way, I still have a slight issue with that. But yeah, it's cool. I think it's like wow, that's awesome. It's a conversation starter. Doors have been opened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy to look. That's a weird way to start. where does this resentment, for lack of a better word, questioning, I guess, stem from, right? Skepticism, I guess you could say. I feel like a portion of it is like, oh, if he is, right? Like, some of it's going to be like, oh, like, I don't believe him, right? Because he has this past, blah, blah, blah. But, like, that's true with everybody, right? If I had, as Chris said, a digital record of everything I have said in my life or done, right? Or if I was famous for
something
longer than I've been alive, right? Kanye's been famous for a long time. Like, you could look at that and go like, oh, he's got a nicey past, right? Like, yeah, of course. Right? He's paparazzi following him everywhere. I say dumb stuff all the time, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do.
It's funny you say that too, because like I'm a huge Sufjan Stevens fan, who's like an indie artist who's a Christian, and his music's not like vulgar or crass. It's arguably like very like eloquent and I don't know, sophisticated for lack of a better word, but like at the same time, he's still even in his music, he's still talking about like certain love affairs or mistakes he's made, and like just because it's not presented in the same way as like a Kanye album, you know, like it's not hip hop.
That's so important. It's presentation too. Misconceptions of the culture, right? I remember. This is so because one of your questions talked about the Hillsong singer.
Songer.
But I remember there was a guy that I met who fell away from faith, and he posted like all these articles about like people who like joined in as a backup singer for Hillsong, and then like behind the scene they're like, oh, like they like release their like the inside scoop of Hillsong. They're like, oh, they drink alcohol, oh, they swear, and all these things, and then it's just like you have a very big misconception of like the Christian life, right? And I think people have an expectation, and like because of it, the spectrum of conservative, liberal, like Christianity and everything, it gets so mixed up when people people say the word Christian, then they expect certain things, right? Like some people think you're homophobic, other people think you're like a goody two shoes. But I think that's also our job as Christians to show like we also like similar things. We also are just normal people. Like, yeah, I don't know.
This is a good spot to segue away from Kanye.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we could talk about Kanye and his past and kind of all these other things, but I think he was a great example for this larger point of the ridicule and like the focus of public figures. There's countless lists. I mean, I can't think of any examples, but there's millions of people who either claim seems negative, because that makes it seem like I'm searching after them, who are Christians.
Yeah.
Whether you believe them or not is up to you. But who have either a crazy past or like are in scandals or, you know, crazy things happen in life. But like, does that make them any less of a Christian, right?
Yeah.
And like how that happens to us. We just, as I said, don't have paparazzi following us.
Right.
Ridiculing and news articles, right? Like tomorrow there's not going to be an article about me in the New Yorker.
Right.
Because I don't matter.
Like you live in Western Massachusetts.
Right. I'm like just 7 billion other people.
Yeah.
And so like I can get away with that and put on layers and go like, oh shoot, this is what I look like to these people. But like famous people can do that to a degree, but they can't hide.
Right.
There's no one at my door. Like no one's trying to take photos of me in my window, right?
Right.
You don't know.
I mean, I hope not. But thanks, Chris.
No.
But like
that's why like Britney Spears had that mental breakdown, you know.
Because they're constantly being watched.
Yeah.
But I think also like I go back to that same point. Like there will always be something to criticize.
No, yeah.
Earlier before the podcast, I was showing Chris it's Instagram account Preachers and Sneakers, because I like sneakers and I'm Christian, but like Preachers and Sneakers, an Instagram account that like screenshots like pastors who have like these expensive shoes, like resale value of like upwards of 500 onwards, right? But like even that in itself, right? They're still preaching, they're still sharing the gospel, but then what do their like you said, in your case you were talking about like scandals. This is just the outfit. These are just the shoes that the guy has on. And like people are already saying, oh, like, what does that say about you and your culture, right? Like, why is that money going into your shoes as opposed to like a charity, stuff like that? Yeah. Everyone will always be critiqued about something, no matter what.
Yeah. And that, so Yeah, that's also a good segue. Like to play devil's advocate with ourselves. Like, at what point is it just like lackadaisical? I don't know.
We're seeking to find ways to ridicule people.
Well, no, like, so the Hillsong was example. Like, so he was like in Hillsong and he was like questioning his faith and like making all these public statements about it. And I was having a conversation with someone about how like that was like causing a lot of people to question their faith because he was in like this position of worship leading and doing that instead of like dealing with it in a more, I guess, private way.
Yeah.
But I think the larger thing I was thinking about was like, at what point is it like we're just letting people get away with things, for lack of a better phrase? Like, not like we're in charge of what people do, but like, you know, like, so like, at what point is it just like, this guy's obviously living a very like sinful lifestyle and just nothing's being done about it. Nobody's like holding him accountable. Like, is that even up to us? You know? Because if it was like, I don't know, I think of like if a pastor of a church or something was like clearly, I don't know. I can't think of a good example.
Like blatantly selling drugs, like at the front, like
right?
Like
yeah,
at the front of the church door.
Or like, you could be even more vague. Maybe I just enjoy being vague, but
it's probably better in this case.
Honestly, yeah.
probably. But
Not a real case scenario, by the way. What I just said.
yeah,
Yeah, for the record, nothing that we know
yeah.
of going on with any of our pastors.
I'm just trying to find something extreme to say.
but it's I think it's very interesting. So I don't want to get too much into this, but don't worry, I don't have a scandal. You both looked at me very intently.
Do tell.
I didn't mean to lick my lips when you said that. I just have really dry lips right now.
So one of my classes is my composition class, and we focused on shame for the entire year. A very interesting class. My favorite class, I may add. But so it was mostly like public shamings involving internet and like the ridicule people get from that, and it was interesting. But this brings up like 1,000 discussions we had in class, so I'm losing it right now. But without getting into too much detail, the people, right? We as the public, in this case, like Christians, right? Sure. If someone in a public position slips up, has a scandal, messes up to any degree, right? The ridicule will happen regardless.
Yes.
And like that ridicule in some ways is loving a way, keeping someone accountable. So I think it's to say like, should we, right? It depends on your definition of we, but like, should we keep someone accountable for it? Well, if you don't, 200,000 people will. And they will do it poorly. So I think if you approach things with grace, right? I think from the class, two things are like keeping people accountable and like empathy, right?
Yeah.
Like the two ways to avoid these situations. And like, how often do we go like, oh, he did this. Oh, bad, not Christian. And like, oh, okay. Ooh, yeah. Like, but what happened? That was you. Right? How would you feel? So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Accountability is hard because, how do you hold someone accountable, right? Like, if it's Sam, we can be like, okay, Sam, like, probably shouldn't do that,
Yeah.
or like, let's come beside you and work you through that, right? When it's someone thousands of miles away, right? Or who has, for lack of better word, clout.
You said that with such a bitter
Clout.
clout.
Santa Clout.
But someone who has all that, right, like has this draw, has this attention, is going to receive that, whether or not they mess up, but especially when they mess up. Think
Of course,
like
yeah.
presidents, politicians, and it like happens outside the Christian circles as well. Hopefully more often, but honestly, maybe not. Right?
Because there's not much we can. I mean, we can't do. Like, if Kanye goes out and messes up, like, what can I do?
Am
What
I gotta come alongside Kanye and be like,
and
okay,
it's like,
let's
yo,
not do
Kanye,
that.
man, like, how you doing? No, yeah, but like, I think at least on our side as Christians who are a bit more wary, like,
That was an interesting sentence.
yeah. See, that's what. How do I say it? I don't know. Because it's like, let's say some celebrity who is Christian messes up, and it's all over the news. Like, how do we as Christians also? How do we, as the simple peasant Christians who are not of the clout variety, what do we do, right, when we interact with each other, right?
Yeah.
And even if it's in like the church, even if it's like amongst our friend groups, like one, it's to shepherd and go alongside the person who needs the assistance, but also I think I think this is going to receive disagreement, but like also the crowd control around it, right? It's like
That's the point I was going to make.
yeah, it's like. You can talk. It's a conversation to have, right? Like I'm sure, like you can talk. People will bring it up. They're like, "Oh, like I knew it," but then it's just like like people go through things, and like
Yeah.
I had something I want to mention. Oh, going back to the Hillsong guy, because I think you mentioned a good thing. Like because of his questioning, a lot of people started questioning their own faith, right? And reading the one news article I pulled up before the podcast, but like it said that he was posting quotes and articles and things by people who also had fallen away from faith. So I had two reactions when I read about this. One, I admire him for being so real about his faith. I think that's powerful to show that you struggle as well, and kind of like normalizing it and saying that everyone goes through it. But then also my second thing is that the amount of like influence he has, if it's causing other people to stumble, like is that okay?
That's where my mind went.
I'm like struggling with that right now, because like part of me, I'm like, his PR team should have kind of thought. I felt like this is definitely something for the more private matter, right? But then
because like Kanye, to go back to him as an example, but any like commercial artist, quote unquote, they're not like necessarily intending to lead worship, whereas like the Hillsong guy, that's like he's supposed to be, I don't know. It's like a more.
There's also there are also two different trajectories. Like Kanye, I mean, not to quote the top, but he was lifted upwards. Like he came
started from the bottom.
Like his faith was brought him out of a dark spot. But then the Hillsong singer, it's the opposite. His faith was strong, and then he is now in a dark spot. So two very different stories, two very different trajectories.
Yeah,
so I think that also comes into play.
I didn't think of that, actually. That's good.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of it is we're afraid of, quote, backlash Christians will receive. And like, don't sweat it. Right? Like, look at any type of ridicule of the church, right? And this is not like unjust ridicule most of the time. I mean, you can think of once again, a countless list. This one I can come up with some examples.
Chick-fil-A is
not
a
gonna
good
say
one right now.
Yeah. And where like people make mistakes, companies make mistakes, organizations who are, affiliated with faith make mistakes, and sometimes receive justifiable, air quotes, flack or response or ridicule. But like that happens every day, right? So even if like the Hillsong artist brings a bad rap to the Christian name, right? Like, okay. Like, maybe I'm missing, and of course you said like the whole, like he's leading worship, and that's like a great example of like that could cause issues. That could also build faith in a lot of ways. It could, yeah.
To me, that's the bigger issue than like the church's reputation.
Right.
Like,
but I think a lot of people focus on that, where they're like, oh, but like, see, Christians are getting a bad name.
Oh,
and I don't want that.
But
they're gonna get a bad name because they're always gonna mess up.
Yeah,
from day one,
we inherently have a bad name.
Yeah. That's like the first thing that I've heard. Like when in Christianity, it's like once you say you're a Christian, it's not gonna be all like sunshine and gold. Like it's gonna be hard. It's a hard road.
The world's not gonna like you.
Yeah, and Jesus was the first one to say it.
Yeah. He was a smart guy,
and he was king. I wish you could see the amount of dabs that just happened. That was overwhelming.
That's to kind of like bring a last point to this, because we should wrap up soon. But these public figures are in a place. They are in a location, yes. They're in a place where they have this following. They have these people behind them, especially like the Hillsong person is an example of this, but also like a pastor who has a scandal, or a good religious figure, or like I guess a pope that something went wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of those. But like there's all this religious like they should be doing this. They should have this. And they're like, oh, like they can do that. Well, then I can do that. Or like, oh, well, they don't believe anymore, so I don't believe. Right? And some of that, like, I think shows, hopefully, some weak spots in our faith, right? Where like if that person leaves, we're like, oh, wait, we don't really want to go to that church anymore, like because they're not there. Yeah, and like that's hard. Like, and so, like that's a part of that. And like, is that like true like faith, like following Jesus of like, and this like seems kind of like harsh, right? I think, but like if you leave faith because someone else leaves faith, like how genuine was that?
Where was your faith to begin with?
And like that's not saying that that's okay. And that those people shouldn't like,
right?
I don't know. I think of like the Nixon, like goodbye, right?
Oh
they they shouldn't do something like that, right?
But you'd like to think that like the person who's now struggling with their faith because of the Hillsong person, for example, like hopefully they have someone in their church who can be like, let's talk about this. Like,
and so like for me, that's like it doesn't feel like a large issue, and like. You know, I have to believe that God will maybe let someone walk away for a little bit. And like, who knows what'll come out of that.
That's true. Yeah.
And what can I do?
Right.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like,
maybe it's worrying about too much of the larger issue.
Yeah, and like, that doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it or shouldn't worry or shouldn't pray, but like, I don't know. People, this might be my personal bias getting in here, but really focus on external image of Christians, like, or like the other person or whatever, right? Like these examples that could come from public Christian figures falling, but yet they'll get on the interweb and be like, "You're not a Christian." Right? Like, is that any better?
Yeah, right.
And like that could just be that I'm hyper aware of those things, and like that's what I notice. But like, yeah, like where are you, right? In that sense, and like people make mistakes, but
amen to that.
yeah, I don't know, and like, so this whole public figure falling thing, I maybe I don't understand it well, but like, so what? I like
so what?
Yeah, like okay, you don't think Kanye's a Christian? Good for you. He does. Like
That's I mean, unless I'm best buds with Kanye, like I can't do anything about it. I could send him a letter,
but like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do to change anything anyone believes?
But you also have to acknowledge the culture that we live in, right? Like the idea, like I think the fascinating thing about celebrities, right? There are so many people out there who are so obsessed with everything that they do.
Yeah, and
it's like they mold their life around it. I don't know. It's just the idolization. Yeah, the idolization is real.
Yeah,
right. And I think that in itself, like you raised such a good point. Like if someone does fall away from faith because of another individual, it's just like then really where was your faith real? Were you idolizing the individual who was following God and then using that as a platform to continue your faith? It scares me. It scares me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, yeah. God is bigger than me, bigger than Kanye West.
Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah. Yeah, if not, that'd be terrifying because I'm only 5'9", so then you'd be bigger than. I'm just kidding.
How tall is Kanye? Is shorter than you.
I'm sure Kanye is shorter than me. I don't think he's that tall. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. My big thing is like, don't sweat it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like, cut some slack, have some grace, and like, I'm not exempt of that because when I saw the Jesus is King, I was like, what's Kanye doing?
Right.
Like, what's he trying to? What's going on here? Right? Like, okay. But like clearly that wasn't justifiable.
Well, yeah. Thanks everybody. This has been episode 16. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ding, ding. Hit that bell.
Ding ding ding.
That's
ding,
where the ding
ding
comes in. Ding.
Yeah.
Ding. We got to get a bell that we can start dinging in the microphone. Well, I'm gonna get one, and you're not gonna know. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out. I think on the podcast app. I think we're there.
I gotta call Apple.
Apple. Excuse me, Mr. Apple.
Steve Jobs.
Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. We out.
We out.